2008. It's a regular day at Santa Monica Studio. The team is hard at work early in development on God of War 3 when it is announced that their director, Cory Barlog, is leaving. And that news
totally came out of left field. I don't think anybody was expecting it. Yeah, it was a shock. I remember I was sitting at my desk doing work like every other day. And maybe I was like reviewing work with somebody else. I was an art director at the time. He's like, I'm out of here. And and we had a big open, at that time, Santa Monica, and I believe it still is, they're in a different building, but it was a big open studio plan. And he was on the other side of it. Everybody could hear him, and everybody just stopped what they were doing. And he walked out and he shook a couple people's hands. I believe he shook my hand. I sat right next to the exit to the back parking lot. And that's where he was parked. Yeah, it was never the same after that. I mean, I don't think people really understood what was going on because we had no idea what the inner workings were of the situation at the time. I mean, I think I had a little bit of knowledge, but nobody thought he was going to leave. And I think people were shocked, and then the shock turned into this certain degree of fear.
Studio executives asked the team to submit names for who they thought should take over as director, and the number one answer was Stig Asmussen. And while Stig felt ready for the challenge, he didn't
know that I necessarily wanted to do it. I really enjoyed being an art director. The good thing about that is at the time, things have changed since then, and it wasn't very sustainable, but I was able to manage it. I think I had 50 or 60 people reporting to me. I had all of art, all of animation, all of the effects. And we had a really big team because it's an art heavy game. And plus I worked really closely with design as art director. I was able to build a lot of really good connections with people. Outside of the director and maybe the lead engineer, I probably had the best visibility on the entire project. And probably the design lead as well too, because he's a good friend of mine, Todd Pappy. He was one of the people that was being considered as well too. But it was just kind of I was really happy being an art director, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to change that. And they asked me, I think a few times, and I think finally the third time I said I'll do it. And that was based on, having a couple weeks of no director, and we did kind of this director by committee, where the lead producer, the lead designer, and myself as the art director were kind of making decisions collectively, which is a really difficult thing to do with the way that team is structured. A lot of teams can succeed at that because they've honed it into a well-oiled machine that everybody understands. And I started to think, man, if I don't do it, maybe I won't even want to be an art director here anymore. What's the other? I mean, and there was a ton of support. That's why they kept on asking me, is people kept on saying, we think Stig should do it. And the more I got that recognition and that validation, the more I thought about, it's not sustainable the way that we're doing things right now. It made the decision a lot easier for me. I mean, I won't say it was easy, but that's the most important thing, is having the support of the team, because you're going in there and you're doing something that you've never done before. You've watched. I had a lot of experience standing right next to Cory while Cory was making decisions and offering my suggestions to help him form those decisions. But now it was all up to me. And getting back to the support, when you got the support of the team and you're very honest with them, I was always look, I'm going to make mistakes, and but I'll promise you one thing: I'm not going to shoot from the hip. If I don't know an answer to something, I'm going to say I don't know, but I'm going to try to find an answer and get back to you. And if I still don't have an answer, we'll figure it out together. And just trying to find my groove as a director, and a big part of that was just honest and just mutual respect.
And it wasn't just Cory who left either. People like design lead Eric Williams left, executive producer Shannon Stoodstill stepped away.
I mean, we lost some heavy hitters. That was the first thing, is kind of reshuffling and reorganizing and getting people into positions where we felt and they felt like they could succeed. And then it was looking at what we had and the time that was left. I think at the time there was, we can't extend the project. A lot of it was just kind of trying to map out what the next several years were going to be like, completely aside from the creative. But at the same time, we had to keep on moving, because I think we probably had, maybe 125, 150 people that needed work to do. They needed to be fed. I had a pretty good idea of where Cory was going with the story, but there was a lot of elements. It's like, how are these things tracking that we're trying to do? To a certain degree, I felt like I needed to tweak it quite a bit because I had to, be invested in it. I'd expect anybody would do the same thing if I were to leave. Yeah, a lot of it was defining the big moments that we're going to do in the game. That's always important for God of War games. What are the footsteps that Kratos is taking, figuring those out, like where are all the locations that he's going to go that are, born out of the conflict, and ultimately, what's the end resolution.
When making a game, the story is never done until the game ships. Stig had thought of this great ending to God of War 3, but as they got closer to the end of development, they had to cut it down because it involved a bigger
boss fight. And then a lot of the stuff that we put into, and the boss fight was really complicated. And a lot of the stuff that ended up getting filtered into the kind of headspace, like mindfuck sequence, was in a cinematic. It turns out the fact that other part, the fact that it was too big and it was like a complicated boss fight, and we had to like basically pull that back, and we did something that was simpler, that was like a cinematic moment in your hands. It was a blessing in disguise, because it ended up turning out to be much better than what we originally had on paper.
There's an important lesson there. Cutting is often viewed as a negative thing, but Stig just said that because they were forced to make cuts, it made the game better. Cutting forces you to streamline your art and prioritize what is actually important. And don't think you'll be able to avoid cutting either, because it happens
all the time. And that's why, you have good people that trust each other, working together. And the thing is, at the end of the projects, you're like, everybody is in lockstep with each other. So you're making decisions, and you're solving problems like 100 times faster than you were earlier in the game. It just becomes instinct. So yeah, it happens all the time. So, and sometimes it's like, we just want to get rid of this thing, that this problem that we can't solve, and people have already come up with 10 different solutions. So we start talking about those, and yeah, they are better, and they're simpler, and they're cleaner.
And so they made the decision to cut the ending down a little bit, make it a little bit more simple, but it was still missing something. It was missing soul.
A game's got soul when it's hitting you emotionally and you're thinking about it and when I say emotional, it doesn't mean like it needs to have crying moments or anything like that. But you're thinking about it in an artistic way beyond, like, yeah, God of War it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. It's a popcorn game. When I'm talking about God of War 3, new God of Wars have a lot of soul. But when it has meaning, it's more than just a game. That's a really hard thing to kind of describe. It's something or nail down a prescription for. I think more than anything, it's just, does it feel like something more than just a game? Is it something that transcends that?
And so to give God of War 3 soul, Stig came up with a new level, a dream sequence that brought more emotion to the game's conclusion, but deciding to do that led to extra work, more stress, and late nights. But if you ask him...
Yeah, it was totally worth it. I'm really proud of that moment. And there was more people involved as well, too. But that was one of those situations at the end. There was a huge gap. And, like, we did not, we put all this effort into this amazing game. And, like, the things that we were trying to do to resolve it in a real way that could have impact on the player, that's beyond just more killing, is to kind of reflect on that a little bit. And it was super late, but we had to come up with an economical way that we could do it quickly, And I actually, it's funny, is that wasn't that stressful for me, because it was something that I had, since I was actually working on it and I was in the level, I was, working on not only like the layout with Todd, but I was also working on the art. I did all the art in there and like all the lighting. I had 100% control over it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times I'm stressed because I'm stressed about the things that I can't like actually roll up my sleeves and do. And so I could see, well, it's like, this is coming along, and it actually came along a lot faster than I thought it was going to. But yeah, that was totally worth it. And it's still something that, like, I point to in when I'm working on games now, and other people bring up as well.
When reflecting on God of War 1, game director David Jaffe said that one of the most important things you have to do as a director is protect your vision, because there will be a million things from the day you have the idea to the day it's sitting on the shelf that will try to sabotage it and change it. While people reference God of War 3's ending today, at the time, Stig's ending for the game was not a popular decision. David Jaffe himself even
desperately pleaded with Stig. I remember sitting on the floor of my house in San Diego, pitching you. But we had that phone call.
And it wasn't just Dave Jaffe either. Sony executives also asked Stig to change part of his ending because
the way it ends, Kratos isn't dead, but I was trying to kill Kratos. That came down from Sony higher-ups. They said you can't kill Kratos, and that's why we have the blood trail at the end. But that, to me, it was a little bit, it's like, we're just going to end this thing and we're going to end it on a bang. And it's like, and that's going to be it. We're going to move on and we're going to work on a new game.
With everybody trying to get him to change his ending, Stig held firm to his vision. And the last question that I asked him was, after working on God of War for 7 years, what was the number one thing that he learned from Kratos? And his answer is quite fitting when you consider what it took to get the ending of God of War 3 that we have today.
Persistence. That's probably the biggest thing, is persistence.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and if you liked this video, you can listen to my full uncut interview with Stig in Season 3 of the Artwell podcast at the link in the description. Artwell is a podcast where I study the greatest art and artists in history and share everything that I learned with you.